The emergency department never truly slept. It only thinned out, like a guarded perimeter at night. Fewer bodies, lower voices, the same risks waiting in the dark. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, steady and indifferent. The smell was antiseptic layered over old coffee and something metallic that never quite left. Monitors beeped in uneven rhythms, each one a quiet demand for attention. It was 1:17. The night shift had settled into its familiar tension. Not calm, never calm, but controlled. Controlled by habit, by exhaustion, by people who had learned to function while tired and afraid and responsible for lives that were not their own. At the central nurses' station, the agency nurse stood slightly apart. Her badge clipped to her scrub top read L. Carter, RN. No department title beyond that, no seniority stripes. Temporary staff always stood out, not because they did anything wrong, but because they did not belong to the ecosystem yet. They moved carefully, spoke less, asked permission where others assumed it. She was in her late 30s, maybe early 40s. Average height, build that suggested fitness but not display. Her hair was pulled back tight, practical, with no loose strands, no jewelry, no makeup beyond what fatigue allowed. She reviewed a chart on a tablet, posture relaxed but precise, not leaning, not slouched, weight evenly distributed on both feet. Around her, the ER worked. A trauma nurse argued quietly with a resident over bed availability. A security guard leaned against the far wall, arms crossed, eyes drifting toward his phone. A woman coughed behind a curtain, the sound deep and wet. Somewhere down the hall, a patient moaned in pain, each breath a negotiation. Agency, someone muttered nearby, not unkindly, but not warmly either. L. Carter did not react. She finished reading the chart, locked the screen and walked toward bed 12. Her steps were soundless on the tile, not careful, just controlled. Bed 12 held a middle-aged man with chest pain that had not resolved despite medication. His vitals were stable, but his eyes tracked movement too closely, the look of someone who knew things could still go wrong. Pain level? Carter asked. 4, he said. Was 6? She nodded, checked the monitor, adjusted the 4-line with efficient hands. You work here? He asked. Tonight, she said. That answer seemed to satisfy him. Across the department, charge nurse Melissa Vaughn watched the interaction with half an eye. Vaughn had been running ERs for 15 years. She noticed everything, even when she didn't think she did. The agency nurse was fine, competent, quiet, didn't overstep, didn't freeze, didn't chatter, but she also didn't stand out. That was usually good. Carter, Vaughn called. When you're done, can you float to triage for 10? Carter turned immediately. Yes. No sigh. No complaint. No reminder that agency nurses were not supposed to float. She moved. Triage at night was its own kind of chaos. Less volume, more volatility. People who waited until they couldn't anymore. People who didn't trust daylight. People who came in angry, drunk, scared, or all three. A young man paced near the intake desk, hands shaking. Another patient argued into a phone about insurance. A woman sat slumped in a wheelchair, her head tipped back, eyes closed. Carter took in the room in one slow sweep. Exits, lines of sight, who was blocking whom, who was too quiet. She didn't stare, she didn't linger. Her gaze moved the way someone checked mirrors while driving. Can you grab vitals on the wheelchair? The triage nurse asked, already overwhelmed. Carter nodded. As she crouched to adjust the blood pressure cuff, the woman in the chair stirred. Don't, she slurred. It'll be quick, Carter said, voice level. Not soothing, not sharp. The woman grimaced but let it happen. The reading was high. Concerning but not emergent. Carter noted it mentally. Said nothing yet. Behind her, raised voices cut through the hum. I've been waiting an hour, the pacing man said. This is bullshit. I understand, the triage nurse replied, voice strained. We're doing the best we can. Carter finished, stood, and stepped half a pace to the side. Not into the argument, not away from it either. She watched. The man's hands clenched. His breathing changed. Sir, Carter said calmly, without raising her voice. He turned, surprised. You're not being ignored, she continued. But the faster your heart rate gets, the longer this takes. It was not a threat, not comfort, just information. The man blinked. Swallowed. Sit, she said, gesturing to an empty chair. He did. The triage nurse exhaled slowly. Thanks. Carter nodded once and returned to the nurse's station. No one commented on the exchange, no one needed to. ER staff recognized small interventions the way sailors recognized good knots. You didn't praise them, you just trusted them. At 2:03, a trauma alert came in. Motor vehicle collision 2 minutes out. The department shifted immediately. Conversations cut off, beds cleared, equipment rolled. Carter moved without being told. She prepped a bay, checked suction, verified oxygen. She did not take lead. She filled gaps. When the patient arrived, bleeding and barely conscious, Carter took a position near the foot of the bed. Not central, not peripheral. She followed commands exactly as given, anticipated the next one half a second before it came. When the trauma surgeon snapped for more light, it was already there. When the 4 infiltrated, she had another line ready. The case stabilized. The patient was rushed to imaging. Adrenaline drained from the room. Good work, someone said to no one in particular. Carter cleaned blood from her gloves and disposed of them properly. She washed her hands for the full count, methodical, no rush to get back, no visible shaking. At the nurse's station, Vaughn studied her again. Not suspicious. Curious. Where'd you work before this? Vaughn asked casually. Carter looked up. A few places. Level 1 trauma. Yes. Urban. Yes. Vaughn nodded. That explains some things. Not all, but enough. The radio on the wall crackled briefly. Security chatter, indistinct. Vaughn barely registered it. The guard by the wall didn't move. Carter's head tilted a fraction of an inch. She waited. Nothing followed. Just static. She returned to her charting. Time passed unevenly the way it always did at night. 10 quiet minutes, then 5 loud ones, then nothing again. At 3:11 the power flickered. Just a blink. Less than a second. A few nurses groaned reflexively. Generator test? Someone asked. No, that's Tuesday, another replied. The light stabilized. Monitors continued their rhythm. Carter looked up slowly. Power flickers happened. Old buildings. Overloaded grids. Still. She stood and walked toward the far hallway, ostensibly to check a supply cart. As she passed the security desk, she glanced down. The guard's radio sat silent. Volume turned low. She did not touch it. She returned to the nurse's station. Vaughn was on the phone with administration, arguing about beds again. No one noticed Carter's pause before she resumed charting. At 3:24, an alarm sounded briefly, then cut off. What was that? A resident asked. False trigger, someone said. Maintenance has been messing with the doors. Carter typed steadily. Her face gave nothing away. She finished her note, closed the tablet, and looked around the department once more. Nothing was wrong. And yet... She shifted a chair 2 feet to the left, clearing a narrow path between bays. No one commented. She adjusted a curtain tie so it would not snag. She repositioned a crash cart slightly. Wheels aligned. Small things. Invisible things. At 3:41, the ER felt like it was holding its breath. Carter leaned against the counter, hands resting lightly on the edge. Her posture was loose, but her eyes never stopped moving. She did not know. What was coming. Only that the night was not done. And when it arrived, most of them would not be ready. She would be... The ER did not announce that something was wrong. It never did. It showed it in small ways, gaps between expected sounds, responses that arrived half a beat late, systems that worked but not together, the kind of details that only mattered if you were already paying attention. At 4:02, a call light blinked unanswered for longer than it should have. Carter noticed it because she was passing that bay anyway, because she counted seconds without meaning to, because she remembered which rooms were staffed and which were thin. She stepped inside. The patient was asleep, breathing shallow but steady. No distress. She cancelled the light, adjusted the blanket, and stepped back out. At the desk, a junior nurse frowned at the monitor. I didn't hear that one, she said. It happens, Carter replied. True, but incomplete. A few minutes later, a supply runner returned empty-handed from central storage. They're locked, he said. Which is weird. Maintenance? Vaughn asked, distracted. Maybe. No one followed up. Carter filed the information away. Locked doors were normal after hours. Locked doors without notice were not. But nothing was missing. No alarms, no alerts. Still, she changed her walking route on the next round, choosing the longer corridor that passed imaging and the ambulance bay. She did not hurry. The ambulance bay doors were closed. They were usually propped at night. A paramedic stood outside them, scrolling his phone. Busy? Carter asked. He shrugged. Dead quiet. She nodded. Quiet meant nothing. It could mean anything. As she turned back, the Overhead speaker clicked on, then off again. No announcement. A nurse laughed nervously. This place is haunted. No one corrected her. Carter returned to the nurse's station and took a seat she had not been assigned. It gave her a better view down the main corridor and a partial line to the security desk. The guard was gone. Not unusual. Bathroom break. Rounds. She waited. 5 minutes passed. The guard did not return. Carter did not mention it. She logged into a terminal and pulled up the bed map, not because she needed it, but because it let her sit still without looking idle. She memorized which rooms held patients who could not move quickly, which rooms had family members inside, which curtains were drawn. At 4:19, a patient in psych observation began pounding on the glass. "I need my meds," he shouted. "Now!" The tech assigned to him hesitated. The usual response time lagged. "I'll go," Carter said. She approached the room alone, hands visible, posture neutral. "I can't give you anything yet," she said through the door. "But I can sit with you while we wait." The man's breathing was fast. Erratic. "They always lie," he said. "I'm not promising anything," Carter replied. "I'm just here." She stayed. Long enough for his fists to drop, long enough for the pounding to stop. When she stepped away, the tech exhaled in relief. "Thanks," he said. "He listens to you." Carter shook her head slightly. He listened to the quiet. She returned to her seat. The overhead lights dimmed fractionally, barely perceptible. Backup systems recalibrating. This time, Carter looked directly at the ceiling. She stood and walked to the security desk. The radio was still there. Still quiet. She pressed the transmit button once. Nothing. She tried again, adjusting the volume. Static. No response. She set it back exactly as she found it. Vaughn noticed her standing there. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yes," Carter said. It was the truth. For now, at 4:31, a man in a hoodie entered through the front doors. No one stopped him. They rarely did. The ER was public by necessity. He stood just inside, looking around as if orienting himself. Carter watched from across the room. His hood stayed up. His hands were in his pockets. Security was still absent. The man took a step forward, then another, then paused when a nurse passed too close. He turned his head away. Carter's gaze narrowed, not in alarm but in focus. She rose and walked toward the triage desk, placing herself between the man and the corridor that led deeper into the department. She pretended to read a notice taped to the wall. The man shifted direction, angling instead toward the waiting area. He sat. Nothing happened. After a minute, Carter returned to the nurse's station. No one noticed the adjustment. No one needed to. At 4:44, the power flickered again. Longer this time? Monitors chirped in protest before stabilizing. "Okay, that's getting old," a resident muttered. Carter's eyes went to the exits. Still closed. Still functional. She checked her watch. Her shift ended in less than 2 hours. She did not relax. The ER settled again like water after a stone, but the stone had not sunk. It was still moving. Carter stood and quietly moved a portable oxygen tank closer to the central corridor. She aligned it so it would not roll if bumped. She adjusted nothing else. At 4:58, a faint metallic sound echoed. From somewhere beyond the ambulance bay. Too distant to place. No one commented. Carter closed her eyes for half a second, then opened them. She was no longer waiting for something to happen. She was waiting for it to show itself. The ER doors did not explode inward. They slid open. Smooth. Mechanical. Almost polite. The sound should have blended into the night the way all automatic doors did. It didn't. Too many people looked up at once. Too many instincts, sharpened by fatigue, caught the wrongness of it. A man stepped through. He wore a dark jacket zipped to the chin. A mask covered the lower half of his face. Plain, surgical, the kind used 1,000 times a night in this building. His hood was up, his hands were gloved. For a moment he stood still, then he moved. Not fast, not slow, purposeful. Each step placed, not rushed. A nurse froze with a chart half raised. A visitor shifted in their seat, uneasy but unsure why. Somewhere, a monitor alarmed and was silenced too quickly. Carter was already standing. She did not move toward him. She moved sideways, stepping behind a supply column, putting solid structure between herself and the main corridor while keeping a clear line of sight. The man's eyes scanned the room above the mask. Not panicked, not searching randomly, looking for something. "Sir," a unit clerk called. "Can I help you?" The man did not answer. He reached into his jacket, The sound that followed was small, metallic, final. A gun cleared fabric. For half a second the ER forgot how to breathe, then noise returned all at once. Someone screamed. A chair scraped back violently. A patient tried to stand and nearly fell. The unit clerk ducked behind her desk. "Everybody down!" a voice shouted. Not security, a nurse. The masked man raised the weapon, not aiming yet, just high enough to be seen. "Don't," he said. His voice was calm, too calm. "Stay where you are." Carter counted. Distance to the nearest patient bay, distance to cover, distance to exits. How long before panic turned into stampede? She moved, not toward him. Away from the largest cluster of people. "Get down," she said quietly to a family near the wall. Not urgent, certain, they obeyed without questioning why her voice carried more weight than the shouting around them. Vaughn appeared at the nurse's station, eyes wide but focused. "Security!" she yelled. No answer. The masked man took another step forward, gun still visible but not raised. "I'm not here for you," he said. "But if you run, I'll assume you are—" Someone sobbed. Carter slid behind a crash cart and locked the wheels. She positioned it so it partially blocked the corridor leading to trauma bays without fully closing it. She did not look at the gun. She looked at his feet. His stance was balanced, weight-centered. He was not new to holding it. She caught Vaughn's eye across the room. Carter shook her head once. Slow, controlled. Not now. Vaughn swallowed and nodded, though she did not fully understand why. A resident made a sudden move toward a side hallway. The masked man snapped the gun up. Carter spoke before the shot could happen. "Doctor," she said. "Clear. Level. Stay." The resident froze. The masked man's eyes flicked toward her for the first time. Just a glance, then back to the room. "Phones down," he said. "All of them." A visitor hesitated, still clutching theirs. The gun angled slightly in your direction. Carter stepped forward one pace, not toward the gun, into the masked man's peripheral vision. "Phones down," she repeated. Not louder, not challenging. The visitor dropped it. Carter stopped moving. She did not raise her hands. She did not lower her gaze. She stood like she belonged where she was. The masked man shifted again, reassessing. He had not expected resistance. Not this kind. "Where's security?" someone whispered. Carter already knew the answer. The overhead speaker crackled. Nothing came through. "Listen carefully," the masked man said. "I need access to the east wing. You open the doors. No alarms, no heroes." Vaughn hesitated. "I don't have—" "I know who does," the man interrupted. His eyes moved again. Not random. They landed on Carter. Just long enough. Carter felt it settle into place. He had done his homework. She did not react. "I'm an agency nurse," she said. "I don't have access." True. Technically, the masked man studied her. His head tilted slightly, the way people did when aligning assumptions with reality. "Then you'll help anyway," he said, "because you don't want anyone hurt." It was not a threat. It was an assessment. Carter nodded once. "Okay," she said. She turned to Vaughn. "We'll need to clear the corridor." Quietly. Vaughn stared at her. Carter met her eyes, not pleading, not commanding, certain. Vaughn took a breath and raised her voice. "Everyone listen to me. Slowly move to the waiting area. Do not run." People obeyed because someone had to be obeyed. The masked man watched closely. His gun tracked movement, but his finger stayed off the trigger. Carter walked ahead of the group, positioning herself where she could see the intruder and the patients. She guided an elderly man by the elbow, helped a woman lift a gurney wheel that had jammed. All the while she listened, footsteps, airflow, the absence of sirens. This was not a robbery, this was a passage. And he was running out of patience. As the last patient cleared the corridor, the masked man gestured with the gun. Now he said, Carter stepped toward the access panel. She did not rush. She did not stall. Her hand hovered over the keypad. She could feel the room behind her holding its breath. She typed. The doors began to unlock. Somewhere deeper in the hospital, something shifted, and the real crisis began. The east wing doors slid open with a muted hydraulic sigh. The sound carried farther than it should have. Carter stepped back as the masked man moved forward, gun raised now, not at anyone in particular, but ready. He did not thank her. He did not acknowledge cooperation. He passed her like she was part of the architecture. She watched him go. Vaughn leaned close, voice barely audible. "What are you doing?" Keeping people alive, Carter said. It was not reassurance. It was a statement of scope. The East Wing corridor was darker, fewer windows, fewer witnesses, the kind of place hospitals used for overflow, storage, and patients no one wanted walking through public areas. The masked man slowed, checking corners with economy. He knew where he was going. Carter followed at a distance, not close enough to challenge, not far enough to lose sight. "You stay back," he said without turning. "I need to make sure no one wanders in," she replied. "A beat." "Fine," he said. "But if you get loud, I won't." They moved. Behind them, Vaughn whispered instructions into a phone that still had no signal because saying nothing felt worse. Carter's senses narrowed. She tracked the man's breathing. Even. Controlled. Not adrenaline spiked. That meant this was planned, not improvised. They reached an intersection where the corridor split, one side leading toward administrative offices, the other toward a secured treatment suite. The masked man turned right. Carter stopped. "That wing's closed," she said. He paused, then looked back. "No," he said. "That wing's isolated." The distinction mattered. She continued walking. "You're heading toward the observation suites," she said. "Patients can't move quickly there." "I know. Then you'll have to step over them." He stopped fully now. The gun came up, not aimed at her chest, but close enough that the intention was clear. "Don't moralize," he said. "Open the door." Carter looked at the keypad he indicated. She did not reach for it. "There are cameras," she said. "You'll be seen." He laughed softly. "Already planned for that." She believed him. "Then you know the alarms will trigger," she continued. "Not police alarms, internal ones, lockdown protocols. You'll trap yourself." He stared at her, eyes sharp above the mask. "You're talking too much," he said. She held his gaze. "I'm talking to buy you time," she said, "or take it away." That earned another pause. He studied her more carefully now. Not as a tool, but as a variable. "You're not agency," he said. "I am tonight," she replied. The distinction again. Footsteps echoed faintly from behind them, staff moving equipment, trying to look busy, trying not to panic. The masked man lowered the gun a fraction. "Open it," he said. "Or I start removing obstacles." Carter nodded. She stepped to the panel and entered the code she had memorized earlier when she wasn't supposed to be paying attention. The door unlocked. Before it opened, she turned her head slightly. "There's a patient on oxygen inside," she said. "If you discharge a round in there, you'll ignite it." He did not ask how she knew. He simply nodded once. They entered. The observation suite was quiet. Too quiet. Curtains drawn. Monitors dimmed to night mode. 2 patients slept, unaware of how close danger had come. The masked man moved past them, straight to a secured door at the far end. He tried the handle. Locked. He swore under his breath. "This is where you stop," he said to Carter. She remained where she was. "You're looking for records," she said. His head snapped toward her. "Medical files," she continued. "Something that was supposed to disappear." "You don't know that. You're not here for drugs," she said. "You didn't ask for a pharmacy. You didn't ask for cash. You came straight here." Silence stretched. "You're very observant," he said finally. "I get paid to be," she replied. He raised the gun again, closer this time. "Open it." "I can't," she said. "Not without triggering a full lockdown. Then trigger it." Carter shook her head. "If I do," she said, "you won't get out, and neither will anyone else in this wing." He weighed that. Time pressed in on them from all sides, on the patients, on the staff, on whatever plan he was racing against. Somewhere distant, a door slammed. He made a decision. "Fine," he said. "We do this another way." He reached into his jacket. Carter's muscles tensed, not to strike but to move. He pulled out a device. Small, rectangular, not a bomb, a jammer. She recognized it instantly. Her expression did not change. "Cellular?" she asked. "And internal comms," he said. "No one calls out. No one calls in." The lights flickered again, as if in agreement. "This ends with you leaving," Carter said. "No," he replied. "It ends with me finishing." He turned away from her and began working on the lock. Carter stepped back. She did not rush him. She did not try to disarm him. She spoke softly into the quiet. "You already lost your element of surprise." He ignored her. "You're on a clock you didn't set," she continued. "And you're inside a system that doesn't forgive mistakes." He glanced at her, annoyed. "And you're still talking." "Yes," she said. Because you haven't decided whether to shoot me yet." That stopped his hands. He looked at her fully now. The nurse, the posture, the calm. "What are you?" he asked. She met his eyes. "Someone who knows how this ends," she said. Before he could respond, an alarm began to sound. Low, internal. Not loud enough to cause panic, but loud enough to mean the hospital had noticed. His eyes widened slightly. Carter had not touched the keypad. The system had caught up on its own. The first confrontation was over. The next phase had begun. The alarm did not scream. It pulsed, a low, rhythmic tone that blended into the hospital's background noise just enough to be missed by anyone not listening for it. It was not meant for patients. It was meant for systems, for protocols waking up. The masked man froze. Just for a moment, Carter saw it. The microsecond where calculation replaced momentum. "You said no alarms," he said. "I said I wouldn't trigger." "Are them?" Carter replied. "I didn't say they wouldn't notice." He cursed under his breath and abandoned the lock. The jammer went back into his jacket. "How long?" he asked. "Before internal lockdown," Carter said. "Seconds to minutes." "Depends what else you've tripped." His eyes narrowed. "You're guessing." "No," she said. "I'm budgeting." The pulsing tone continued. Lights dimmed another fraction. Doors elsewhere in the hospital began to seal automatically. Not here yet, but soon. Carter turned and walked back toward the corridor. "Where are you going?" he snapped. "To keep this from getting worse," she said. He followed, gun low but ready. They emerged from the observation suite into a corridor that had subtly changed. Fewer people, equipment repositioned, hallway intersections partially blocked by carts and gurneys that hadn't been there before. Not barricades. Obstacles. Carter clocked them instantly. Someone else was adapting. At the intersection, Vaughn stood with 2 nurses and a respiratory therapist. No one was shouting. No one was crying. They were moving patients into rooms, closing doors, drawing curtains. Vaughn looked up when she saw Carter. There was fear in her eyes. And relief. "What's happening?" Vaughn asked. "Partial lockdown," Carter said. "Internal only. It'll cascade. Security. Unavailable." Vaughn's jaw tightened. "Police are en route. I finally got a call out." Carter nodded. "They'll take time." The masked man stopped a few paces back, listening. Carter turned slightly, angling her body so she blocked his view of the nurses without appearing to. "We need to seal trauma bays 3 through 6, Carter said. "Move non-critical patients inward." "No." "One runs." Vaughn blinked. "You can't just—" "Or he panics," Carter said quietly. "And then we lose control of where this goes." The word control hung in the air. Vaughn looked past Carter, finally registering the gun fully. Then she looked back. "Okay," Vaughn said. She did not ask why she was listening to a temporary nurse. She started issuing orders. Carter turned to the respiratory therapist. "I need portable oxygen moved to rooms 8 and 9. Quietly." The therapist nodded and went. A junior nurse hesitated. "Who's in charge right now?" Carter did not answer. Vaughn did. "She is," Vaughn said, surprising herself. The masked man laughed softly behind them. "This is impressive," he said. "You running the place now?" Carter turned to him. "No," she said. "I'm limiting damage." She stepped closer, not close enough to threaten, but close enough to anchor his attention. "You came for something," she said. "Records. Proof. Leverage." He said nothing. "You didn't expect resistance," she continued. "And you didn't expect me." "That's where you're wrong," he said. "I expected a system, not a person." "That's your mistake," she replied. The pulsing alarm changed cadence. Carter's eyes flicked to the ceiling. "They're sealing access points," she said. "You'll be boxed in within 4 minutes." He glanced down the corridor, calculating exits that were disappearing. "You could stop it," he said. "You already opened doors for me." "I opened one," she said. "This isn't a door problem anymore." She gestured subtly. Staff moved when she moved. Doors closed after her words, not before. The corridor narrowed without looking like it was narrowing. Authority implied. The masked man's IP tightened on the gun. "You're enjoying this," he said. "No," Carter replied. "I'm paying for it." He studied her face, searching for ego. Finding none. "You're not bluffing," he said. "No." Another alarm chimed. This one sharper. Somewhere deeper in the hospital, steel locks engaged. The building was choosing sides. Carter took a slow breath. "This is the point where you stop pushing," she said, "and start listening." "For what?" he asked. "For how to leave without killing anyone," she said. "Including yourself." Silence stretched. Behind Carter, Vaughn whispered, "We're ready." Carter nodded without looking. She faced the masked man squarely now. "You don't need to aim that," she said. "If you fire, this becomes something you can't outrun." His eyes flicked to the exits again, then back to her. "You're not law enforcement," he said. "You're not military. You're a nurse." "Yes," Carter said. Tonight, another pulse, another door sealed. The hospital tightened around them, and for the first time since he'd walked in, the masked man looked trapped. The hospital did not close all at once. It closed in layers. A door here, a corridor there. Systems isolating themselves the way living things did when injured, slowly, deliberately, without drama. The masked man felt it before he could name it. His breathing changed, not faster, shallower. "You said 4 minutes," he said. "I said boxed in," Carter replied, "not stopped." He scanned the corridor again. What had looked like open space 10 minutes ago now felt segmented. Curtains drawn where they hadn't been, equipment parked with intention, lines of movement subtly broken. The ER had become terrain. "You're funneling me," he said. "ID." "Yes," Carter answered. "Toward what?" "Toward a decision." A sharp cry cut through the corridor before he could respond. From room 9, a patient alarm screamed, high, urgent, unmistakable. "Code Blue, room 9, the overhead voice announced, calm and automated. The masked man turned instinctively toward the sound. Carter was already moving. She reached the room first, pushing the door open with controlled urgency. Inside, an elderly woman lay rigid on the bed, eyes wide, chest barely moving. The monitor showed a plunging oxygen saturation. Respiratory failure. The therapist Carter had positioned earlier was there, frozen for half a second when he saw the gun behind her. "Bag her," Carter said. "Now." The therapist obeyed. The masked man hovered in the doorway, weapon half raised, uncertainty flashing behind the mask. "This isn't my problem," he said. "It is now," Carter replied without turning. "Because if she dies, everything changes." The therapist began ventilating manually. The woman's chest rose unevenly. Carter checked the oxygen line. Disconnected. She reattached it with one firm motion. "Pressure's too high," the therapist said. "Lower it," Carter said. "She's fragile." The masked man shifted his weight. "You're using this," he said. "You're stalling." "I'm working," Carter replied. "You're the one waiting." The monitor numbers crawled upward slowly. The woman gasped, color returning to her cheeks. Carter exhaled once. Then she turned. "You don't fire in here," she said. "Not now." He looked from the patient to the therapist to the equipment. Then he backed away from the doorway. One step, then another. Carter followed him into the corridor, closing the door behind her. The code alarm silenced, but its echo lingered. "That was deliberate," he said. "Yes," Carter replied. "You moved her oxygen." "No," she said. "Your movement did." He stared at her. "You caused this," he said. "No," she said again. "I exposed it." They stood there, facing each other in the narrowing corridor. Behind Carter, staff resumed motion, controlled, quiet, purposeful. No one ran, no one screamed. They trusted her now. That trust weighed on her. "You're losing time," she said, "and control." He laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You think I don't see that?" He reached into his jacket again. Carter's stance shifted, not aggressive, but ready. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, not a weapon. He dropped it at her feet. "A name," he said. "A file. I leave with it, or I don't leave at all." Carter did not bend to pick it up. "You're bargaining now," she said. "I'm simplifying." She shook her head. "You came for leverage," she said, "but you didn't account for collateral." He gestured down the hall. "You mean them?" "Yes," Carter said. "And yourself." A nurse hurried toward them, breathless. "Room 6 is crashing," she said to Carter. "We need—" Carter raised a hand. "I'll be there in 30 seconds, she said. "Start compressions." The nurse hesitated, glancing at the gun. Carter met her eyes. "Go," she said. The nurse ran. The masked man watched the exchange, something dark and unsettled shifting behind the mask. "You're splitting yourself," he said. "That's a mistake." "Yes," Carter replied, but it's my mistake." She stepped past him. He grabbed her arm, not violently, not gently, just enough to stop her. "You walk away," he said, "and I escalate." She turned slowly. "You already did," she said. She looked down at his hand on her sleeve. He released it. Carter moved toward room 6. Inside, chaos waited. Compressions underway, sweat, shouted numbers, fear. She took over without announcing it. Hands guided. Pressure corrected. Meds prepared and delivered. A rhythm returned. The patient's pulse flickered back. Another life pulled back from the edge. When Carter stepped out again, her hands were shaking. She hid it by wiping them on a towel. The masked man was still there, still waiting, but something in him had changed. "You're bleeding yourself dry," he said quietly. "Yes," Carter replied. "And you'll still stop me?" "Yes." Sirens sounded in the distance now, faint, but real. He heard them. So did she. The clock he hadn't set was almost out, and the next choice would cost more than time. The sirens grew louder, then steadied, no longer approaching, but circling, coordinating. Law enforcement had arrived at the perimeter. They would not rush in, not without clarity, not without someone in control. Inside the hospital, that control was fragile. The masked man listened, head tilted, reading the sound the way others read weather. "They won't come," he said. "Not yet." "No," Carter replied. "They'll wait, that buys me time. It costs you options." He considered her again more carefully than before. Not as an obstacle, not even as an adversary, as a problem he could not solve quickly. "You're tired," he said. "Yes," Carter answered. "You're injured," he continued. His eyes flicked briefly to the blood seeping through the towel she still held loosely in one hand. She had not noticed when it started. Skin torn on a metal edge. During compressions. "Yes," she said again. "And you're still standing in front of me." "Yes." Something like respect flickered across his eyes. It did not soften him, it sharpened him. "Then listen carefully," he said. "Because this ends one of two ways." "I know," Carter replied. He stepped closer, not threatening, intimate. His voice dropped. "There's a patient in this hospital," he said, "who should not exist on paper. Someone protected, someone buried in bureaucracy." Carter said nothing. "I need confirmation," he continued. "One file, one name, then I leave." "You don't," she said. He smiled thinly. "You're wrong." She shook her head. "If I give you that," she said, "you don't leave. You take more, or someone else does. You think I'm the only one?" He asked. "No," Carter said. "That's why I won't open the door." Silence stretched between them. Behind Carter, Vaughn approached carefully. "We're losing staff," Vaughn said quietly. "People are shaken. We can't hold this much longer." Carter nodded once. She had known that already. "Evacuation?" Vaughn asked. "Not yet," Carter said. "That turns chaos outward." The masked man watched the exchange closely. "You're choosing the building over yourself," he said. "No," Carter replied. "I'm choosing the people inside it." He laughed softly. "That's what they always say." Carter turned back to him. "You're not leaving with what you came for," she said. "But you don't have to die here." His eyes hardened. "Death doesn't scare me." "I know," she said. "That's why you're dangerous." She stepped aside, just enough to expose herself fully. No cover, no buffer. The nurses behind her tensed. "If you want leverage," she said, "you—" "Take me!" Vaughn inhaled sharply. "Carter!" "It's fine," Carter said, without looking back. The masked man froze. "You're offering yourself," he said. "I'm offering containment," she replied. "You want control? This is it." He studied her for a long time. "You don't know what you're offering," he said. "Yes," she said. "I do." She lifted her badge slowly and unclipped it from her chest, let it hang from her fingers. "No title," she said. "No authority. Just me." The corridor felt suddenly smaller. "You come with me," he said, testing it. "Gun to your head. That buys me a way out." "It buys you seconds," Carter replied, "before someone panics, before someone fires, before this collapses, and you'll trust me not to shoot you?" "No," she said. "I'm trusting myself to manage you." The sirens outside cut off abruptly. Radio silence. That was worse. The masked man exhaled slowly. "You're not bluffing," he said. "No." He lowered the gun slightly. "Fine," he said. "You walk, I follow. Any trick?" "I won't," Carter said, "but you will." She turned and began walking toward the central corridor. Every step sent pain through her arm. Blood slicked her palm again. She ignored it. Behind her, the masked man followed. Staff parted silently as they passed. No one spoke. They reached the central nurses' station, open, exposed, surrounded by glass and light, the most dangerous place in the ER. Carter stopped. "This is as far as you go," she said. He frowned. I said containment," she replied. "This is it." She turned to Vaughn. "Lock everything behind us," Carter said. "Now." Vaughn hesitated, then obeyed. Doors sealed. The masked man realized it at the same moment the locks engaged. "You set me up," he said. "Yes," Carter replied, "and I paid for it." He raised the gun again, hesitated, because for the first time there was nowhere to move, nowhere to run, only her. "You win," he said quietly, "but you don't walk away clean." "No," Carter said. "I never do." She stepped closer. "Put it down," she said. He looked at her bleeding hand, her steady eyes, then slowly he placed the gun on the counter. The sound it made was small, final, and in that moment the cost of command settled fully on Carter's shoulders. She had won, and she was empty. The gun lay on the counter between them. No one touched it. The fluorescent lights above the nurse's station hummed softly, unchanged, indifferent to the gravity of what had just ended. The ER did not erupt into cheers or sobs. It absorbed the moment the way it absorbed everything else, quietly, without ceremony. Carter kept her eyes on the masked man. He stood still, hands open at his sides, posture rigid, not defeated, contained. Vaughn moved first. She stepped forward and slid the gun out of reach with the sole of her shoe, pushing it behind the desk. Her hands were shaking. She did not try to hide it. "It's over," Vaughn said, more to herself than to anyone else. "Not yet," Carter replied. The masked man looked at her sharply. I said you were contained," Carter said, "not cleared." Footsteps echoed from the far corridor, measured, heavy, more than one set. Carter listened. Not police cadence, not rushed. Hospital security had finally reappeared. 2 guards, faces pale, radios crackling uselessly at their shoulders. They stopped short when they saw the scene. "Drop to the floor," one shouted. "Vo!" "Ice breaking." The masked man did not move. Carter raised one hand, not fast, not dramatic. "Easy," she said. "He's unarmed." The guard hesitated, looked at Vaughn, at the nurses lining the corridor, at the man without a weapon. "Where have you been?" Vaughn snapped. The guard swallowed. "Locked out. Comms went dead." Carter nodded. "That tracked. More footsteps now. Different rhythm. Shoes on tile. Purposeful. Controlled. Law enforcement entered through the east corridor. 4 officers, weapons raised but disciplined, eyes sweeping. They stopped when they saw Carter standing between them and the masked man. "Ma'am," the lead officer said. "Step away." Carter did not move immediately. She glanced at the masked man once more. "This is where I stop," she said quietly. He met her gaze. "I know," he replied. She stepped aside. The officers moved in, cuffing him swiftly, efficiently. No resistance, no words. As they pulled him away, one of the officers paused, looking back at Carter. "Who was in charge here?" he asked. There was a moment, brief, fragile, where the answer could have changed everything. Vaughn opened her mouth. Carter shook her head almost imperceptibly. Vaughn closed her mouth again. "We managed internally," Vaughn said instead. "We need medical clearance before transport." The officer nodded, already moving on. As the masked man passed Carter, he slowed. "They'll ask questions," he said quietly. "You know that." "Yes," Carter replied. "And you won't answer them." "No." A corner of his mouth lifted beneath the mask. Something like understanding. "Figures." He said. He was gone. The ER exhaled. Not all at once, not loudly. In pieces, someone sat down hard on the floor. Another nurse leaned against the wall, eyes closed. A patient began crying, not from fear but from release. Carter felt the room tilt. Adrenaline drained fast, leaving behind weight and pain and a sharp ache in her arm that demanded attention now that it could. She reached the sink and turned on the water. The blood was brighter than she expected. A nurse approached her, hands hovering uncertainly. "You're hurt," the nurse said. "Yes," Carter replied. "Let me—" "After," Carter said. "Check your patients first." The nurse hesitated, then nodded and moved away. Carter wrapped her arm in a clean towel and leaned against the counter. Her legs trembled. She locked her knees. The lead officer returned. "We'll need statements," he said. "From everyone." Carter met his eyes. "I was an agency nurse," she said. I followed instructions. He studied her for a moment, her posture, the way the department oriented subtly around her, the absence of chaos where chaos should have been. "Yes, ma'am," he said finally. He did not press. The officers cleared the scene with quiet efficiency. Evidence collected, doors reopened, radios chirped back to life. The hospital began to resemble itself again. Vaughn approached Carter slowly. "You saved us," she said. Carter shook her head. "You did what you were trained to do." Vaughn's eyes filled, just slightly. "So did you." Carter did not answer. She let a medic clean and dress her arm. The cut was shallow, painful but nothing more. No report filed beyond the minimum required. At 6:12, dawn light crept through the high windows at the end of the corridor, thin and pale. Carter checked her watch. Her shift was over. She returned to the locker room, changed quietly, and placed her badge in the return bin with the others. Just another temporary name among many. As she walked toward the exit, a uniformed man stood near the doors. Not police, not hospital staff, military bearing. Civilian clothes. He nodded to her. "Ma'am," he said softly. She paused. "Thank you," he added. "No rank, no explanation." She nodded once and kept walking. Outside the air was cool and still. Sirens had faded. The world had moved on. Behind her, the hospital stood, unchanged, unremarked, intact. Carter walked into the morning without looking back. No spotlight, no record, only the quiet weight of what she had carried. By the time the sun fully cleared the horizon, the emergency department had returned to its familiar rhythm. Not normal. It would take days for that. But functional. Beds were filled again. Stretchers rolled. Monitors beeped in steady patterns that no longer spiked with panic. The night's events had already begun compressing into reports, checklists, and quiet conversations that would trail off whenever someone new entered the room. Carter sat alone in her car for several minutes before turning the key. Her hands rested on the steering wheel, still, as if waiting for another signal. Another alarm. Another decision that could not be undone. None came. She started the engine and pulled out of the hospital lot without hurry. Behind her, police vehicles remained, lights off now. Administrative staff were arriving, faces tight with the knowledge that they would spend the day answering questions they didn't yet have words for. Carter did not envy them. She drove until the hospital disappeared from her mirrors. Only then did she pull over. The cut on her arm had stiffened. She unwrapped the bandage carefully, inspected it, then replaced it with practiced efficiency. The movement was automatic. Familiar. She sat back and closed her eyes. Images surfaced uninvited. The woman in room 9 gasping for air, the gun resting on the counter, the way Vaughn's voice had steadied when it mattered. The cost did not come all at once. It never did. Her phone vibrated once. "No caller ID." She answered without speaking. "It's done," a voice said on the other end. "Male, controlled, familiar in a way that did not require memory." "Yes," Carter replied. "There will be questions," the voice continued. "But not for you. I didn't expect otherwise," she said. A pause. "You stayed longer than you should have." "Yes. That wasn't part of the plan. No." Another pause. "Longer this time." "You're cleared," the voice said finally. "Your name won't appear anywhere it shouldn't." "Thank you," Carter said. The line went dead. She set the phone down. The conversation left no relief behind. Only confirmation. Carter pulled back onto the road and drove toward the small apartment she kept for assignments like this. Temporary places, neutral places, easy to leave. When she arrived, she climbed the stairs slowly, every step reminding her that exhaustion was no longer optional. Inside, the apartment was quiet and impersonal. A bag half-packed by the door, clean counters, no photographs. She sat on the edge of the bed and removed her shoes. For a long moment, she did nothing else. Then she lay back and stared at the ceiling. Sleep, ka! Me in fragments. Short, shallow. Interrupted by the echo of alarms that were no longer sounding. At noon, she woke and checked her phone. A single message from Vaughn. They're calling it a security incident. No injuries reported. Patient safe. Carter read it once. Then she deleted it. By mid-afternoon, the hospital had already begun rewriting the night. Language softened. Responsibility distributed. Systems blamed and adjusted. That was how institutions survived. Carter showered, dressed, and repacked her bag. At 17:40, she checked out of the apartment. No one stopped her. No one followed. At the airport, She moved through security without incident. Her name did not trigger anything. It never did. She waited at the gate with other travelers, people returning home, people leaving it. No one looked at her twice. A television mounted above the seating area played muted news footage. Local hospital incident resolved without casualties. No images, no names. Carter looked away. When boarding began, she stood and joined the line. As she stepped onto the plane, a man in a dark jacket stood aside to let her pass. His posture was formal, intentional. He did not salute, he simply inclined his head. Carter returned the gesture without breaking stride. She took her seat by the window. As the plane taxied, she watched the terminal recede, then disappear. Somewhere below, a hospital continued its work. Lives saved and lost in equal measure, systems adapting, people forgetting that was how it had to be. Carter closed her eyes as the plane lifted into the air. There would be another assignment, another place where she would arrive unnoticed and leave the same way, another crisis she would absorb quietly, then carry alone. For now there was only distance, and the silence that followed when the noise was gone,